Finally, for this week's episode, I'll be walking you through the Darkhole 2 CTF, also a vulnerable machine hosted on the Runo platform. We begin with the discovery phase, where I used the mmap tool to run a robust scan on the target. This time around, I utilized the -A, which is the aggressive scan flag, and basically it also runs scripts and gives you the output. It tells you whether the open ports are vulnerable. So I'll be giving you the full output here so you can see more clearly. So here we can see that it tells us that the port 22 and the port 80 are open. And something that grabbed my attention here is that it told me a Git repository was found, and this can be a serious vulnerability, as if the Git folder can truly be available on the domain. This can allow us to, using the Git dumper tool, which you can get off GitHub, it can allow us to construct the whole code base and basically look for any sensitive file that developer might have left behind. Now that I know this, I went ahead to use Nikto to perform a scan. Nikto is a website vulnerability scanner, and this also showed me that the full repo details might be present. With this now, went ahead to visit the site, which is the port 80, and it's just a simple landing page. So it's just a basic landing page with the view details and the login option. After this, we'll be moving on to the enumeration phase, whereby we used GoBuster, a directory brute force tool, to check for hidden directories that are present. So I went ahead to run it on the port 80. Here is the output. With this, I was able to see that there is a Git folder present on the domain. Also, it has the logout.php, login.php, the dashboard.php, and the index.php. I further went ahead to enumerate the .git subdomain using GoBuster, where I was able to see that it had the object, the info, and the logs. Now that I've selected the Git directory, I went ahead to clone a GitHub tool called Git tools, which contains the tool which will be used to reconstruct the whole code base, called the Git dumper. I'll be showing you the way to get the tool here. So here, this is the repository. So I went ahead to clone the repository. Upon cloning it, I changed directory into the Git tools. I saw the dumper when I listed it. Now I changed my directory to the dumper, and here it is the git dumper.sh, which is the tool we're using to reconstruct the whole code base. So what we need is just the URL, and here it is, the HTTP, the target IP address, and the /git subdomain. And here is where I want the code base to be stored, in which I stored inside my /tmp folder, basically the temporary folder that erases upon reboot. Running this command, we're able to reconstruct the whole code base and get it saved in the tmp folder, which is the temporary folder. And here we can see it here. Once you ls using the -a or flag, the -a allows you to see hidden directories too, as Linux generally saves files that begin with the dots as hidden files. So you have to use the -a to see it. And here we can see it here. So I changed my direction to the dots, using the .git. And here I was able to see the files present. What I did first is to change the directory into the logs, as the logs will show you the commit activity, and I'll be able to uncover any hidden data there. So by changing my directory into the logs, I was changing directory to the logs. Here you can see that it contains two folders. One is the head file, and the other one is the refs directory. Went ahead to open the head file, and here I can see that so I went ahead to open the head file, and here it is obvious that, let me make it clearer here so you can see it clearly. So here it says that the first commit is the first initialized commit. The second commit, the message there is I added login.php with default credentials, and the last commit says I changed login.php file for more secure. And here you can see the commit hashes. So now what I did was, since here it says here that he added the login.php file with default credentials, I went ahead to copy this commit hash and use the checkout option to revert back to this version. So with that, I was able to revert back to the version, and this is the command here used, the git checkout and the commit hash, which was gotten from here. So after running this, it is now being switched back to this particular commit. That means this particular version. So now that I know this, I went ahead to open the login.php file. And upon opening the login.php file, I was able to uncover the email and password of the admin. Here it says here that the email is the lushadmin.com and the password is 321. With these admin credentials, I can go ahead and log in to the page. So what I did next was I came back here to this login page. I entered the email, which is the lush@admin.com, and inputted the password to, which is 321. And with this, I was able to gain access as admin. And this is the welcome page. So now that I've been able to gain access, what I went ahead to do was to test for several web page vulnerabilities, in which I realized that it was vulnerable to IDOR, but its IDOR vulnerability didn't really do anything special for me. So I went ahead to test for SQL injection by running just a simple payload, which is the all1 equals 1. I'll make it more visible here. So here you can see in the URL it says all1 equals 1, which means it will always run as true. And with this, I still got the same output as before, which is the default dashboard page. Now I know it's vulnerable to SQL, so I went ahead to automate my SQL injection with SQL map, and I used it to dump the old database. So firstly, this is the command I used. So the way the command works, the SQL map, which is the name of the tool, the -u is basically the flag for you to input the URL, which is being shown here. And I got that from over here. So after doing that, I set the cookie, which is the PHP session ID. To get your PHP session ID, you can easily go to developer options tool and go to your storage. In your storage, you'll be able to see the PHP session, which I copied and I pasted it here, which is the PHP session ID. Now I use the -dbs option, which is the database. So it lists out all the database present behind this particular web app, and the -bat basically just says yes to every prompt it will ask. So you don't have to start typing yes every time you run the command. With this, I was able to uncover the databases present, which included the Darkhole 2, the information schema, the MySQL performance schema assist. We know we need the Darkhole 2 database. That was why I used this. Now with this, I went ahead to perform further SQL injections using SQL map. So I'm going to enlarge it again so it makes it clearer. So here it says that here we use the same command, the SQL map, the -u, the URL, the cookies being set, and here we use the -d Darkhole 2. The -d is the database, and now we know we have a database called Darkhole 2, so we went ahead to use the Darkhole 2. And what changed here is the tables, whereby this will list out all the tables being present behind the database, and here we're able to see that it contains both the SSH and users. So I went ahead to dump the database of the users and also the database of the SSH, and here is the output. So for the users table, when dumped, it showed us the lush@admin and the password, which we've gotten earlier. So this is not really usable for us for now. But for the SSH, I was able to uncover the SSH password and the SSH username, in which the password is full and the username is jihad. Now that I have this, I went ahead to load up my Metasploit framework by using the MSF console command, and I searched for an auxiliary module called SSH_login, which allows you to connect remotely via SSH. The options required for this are the password and the username, which you have already. So I set the password as full, the username as jihad, and also the remote host, which is the IP address of the target, which was being set in, and upon running it, we got a session. And the session that was gotten was a limited shell as jihad. So with this, we've been able to complete the foothold phase. We can then move on to the privilege escalation phase. The whole privilege escalation phase was also automated using Metasploit, as it allows for automation from foothold to escalation phase. So here, first thing I did was to run the local exploit suggester module, which suggests proven paths by which the shell can be escalated to a root shell. So now to start, we upgraded the initial shell to a interpreter shell, as the interpreter shell is more powerful and it's more compatible with post exploits. So to do this, we use the sessions-u flag, and the session ID is 1, which is being shown here. So the sessions-u1, and with this, we're able to get an interpreter shell. And here you can see here, interpreter 86. Now that we've got an interpreter shell, we can go ahead to run the local exploit suggester. So to first thing, we search for the suggester and we got it. So we loaded it up, and the only option available for the suggester is the session. And the session which we need to run this suggester on is the session 2, the interpreter session. So after setting the session, go ahead and run it. Upon running it, we got some proven escalation paths, in which the most promising one was the first one, which is the PK exec, basically a vulnerability to the Pokit package present on the machine. Went ahead to load up this exploit and set the options, in which the option required here was for us to set the session, and I set the session as 2, which is also the interpreter session. I ran it and I was able to successfully gain root access. Here you can see using the get UID command, you can see root, and you can see the into the root, and here is the flag. That's the catroot.txt, and Darkhole is that's the flag. And with this, we were able to gain full compromise of the system as root, meaning we can perform as much command as we want or as much action as we want without any hindrance, as the highest form of privilege available is root. So here is, I'll make this larger now. So here is a brief summary of the walkthrough, which I did in a tree-like structure, and it goes from discovery to the enumeration to the foothold and finally the privilege escalation phase. Then before I leave, I'm giving you some recommendations. As I said earlier, patch critical vulnerabilities. Basically, in the case of this CTF, it's also the Pokit package that is vulnerable. So update the Pokit package. And here's an example of how you can do that using the sudo apt update and the sudo apt upgrade. Also, adding SSH access by using strong, unique credentials, and disable SSH password login where possible. And if required, for the SSH to be accessible, you can set the password authentication as no, or use both the password authentication and the private keys. Lastly, secure the Git repo. Prevent the .git directories from being exposed in production environments. Thank you. Here is a brief weekly report for the series Darkhole 1 and Darkhole 2. The discovery phase, to the enumeration phase, to the foothold, and finally the privilege escalation phase. Thank you.